One of the pillars of mindfulness is the practice of acceptance. Actually, the pillars that we really focus on begin with awareness, and that's what we do in meditation is we sit and we allow ourselves to take stock, to do inventory of, and to be aware of where we are, of all the things that are going on around us, to be aware of the fact that we are who we are, and who we are is a composite of everything we've ever done, every place we've ever been, everyone we've ever met, everything we've ever learned, every mistake we've ever had. And we have to take stock of that and come into the space where we are aware of that as the truth. But the most difficult part is when we're starting to take stock of those things, we deny some of that truth. So the next step after awareness is to work on acceptance, because so many of us don't want to accept all these different parts of us. We see ourselves differently than we should. So many people that I work with day in and day out aren't willing to look in the mirror and be totally honest with themselves. They don't look at themselves in the eye and say, you know what, this is who I am. But until we do that, we're not able to truly transform. We can't really change, because if we don't accept who we are, then we're trying to change somebody that we're not. We're trying to change something that isn't real. So in this space of radical acceptance, and we call it radical because the word acceptance itself is a bit wonky, because acceptance to so many people mean it is what it is, right? Okay, I accept that. But that's not what we're doing. We're accepting it, and then we're doing something with it, or we're choosing whether we can do something with it. So a big piece of radical acceptance goes into that space that aligns with the serenity prayer, where we recognize the things we can change and we recognize the things that we can't, and we tap into the wisdom to see the difference. And then we start accepting the fact that we waste a lot of time on the things that we can't change. When we come back into this moment and we recognize the truth, is like, why am I wasting so much time and energy paying attention to the things that I have no control over, those things I can't change? I have to get into a space of acceptance so that I can move into a space of change, putting my energy into the things that I can change, but coming into the space of acceptance that there aren't things that I can't, there are things that I can't change. And if any of those things that I can't change are dangerous to me or harmful to me, then I need to do all I can to protect myself from those things. But once I get into that space of acceptance and I don't waste my time spinning my wheels on the things I can't change, then I can put my energy into the things that I can. So as I'm talking about radical acceptance, it really is a lesson that we teach in the Master of Mindfulness program. So the question might be, why am I teaching it in this sound space? Because I think sound gives us that opportunity to go into that space where we can see the truth, where we can go into that space where we can pause. Because a big piece of mindfulness is practicing the pause. The big piece of mindfulness goes into the space. That's why we do meditation, because when we start learning how to meditate, we learn to see some space between what's happening in front of us and how we choose to respond or not. So we're practicing the pause in meditation. So it is one of the tools and one of the pillars of mindfulness to be able to practice meditation. But meditation's just the tool. Mindfulness is the overall practice. And I believe at the core of everything we teach, that sound is a practice of mindfulness. And so many people ask me this question, like, when they're in that space of receiving a sound that they feel as if they've escaped reality or they've drifted off amongst the stars. And I believe the truth there is they haven't escaped reality. They're resting in awareness itself and understanding that reality is that the mind takes us in all these different directions. So as we're in that space, being immersed by the beauty of the sound of crystal singing bowls and gongs and other instruments, those things are lifting us in these different directions, but they're also releasing energy within us. And that energy shows up in the midst of a sound bath as colors and faces and memories and thoughts. But in that space of receptivity, when we're resting in the awareness of how that sound bath is being received, unlike when we're moving through our regular daily life, we see those bits, those fragments of faces and places and things as like dreamlike images. Where if we're going through the midst of our busy day and these thoughts and feelings and faces show up, we start to see those things and we start wondering why we would think that thought, or why I'm thinking about that thing. We start identifying or judging ourselves based on that fragment of a thought. We're in the dreamlike space of a sound bath. We don't see those things that way. So what we're doing is we're training ourselves to see the reality of a thought is just a thought. It's an energy signal that's moving through the brain. And we don't have to latch onto it because when we latch onto it, it becomes bigger than it is. So when we're in the midst of a sound bath, we don't lay there thinking about that thought and we don't grab onto it because the vibrations keep moving it and changing it. It's the same with our emotions. Now, emotions are, of course, different than thoughts. They are a bit bigger within us, but those emotions that flow through us are energy. And if we latch on to that emotion, it becomes bigger than it needs to, oftentimes. But we don't want to dismiss our emotions. We don't want to dismiss them, but we don't want to identify ourselves by them. And sound, again, gets us into that place where we can see the reality of the emotion that is there. We can see that it is coming from me. I am the feeler of that emotion, but that emotion doesn't define me because there's a whole lot of other stuff going on at the same time. In the same way that my thumb is part of me, my emotion or my feeling, it comes from me, but it doesn't define me in the same way I wouldn't define myself by my thumb. I see it, it is part of me, and I'm glad I have a thumb because I can grab things and I can hold things and I can play guitar and do all these different things. But I don't walk around and say, look at me either. You know, in the same way, we shouldn't walk around and say, I am an angry person, or I am a sad person, or I am this thing or that thing. We shouldn't identify ourselves by these things. And sound gives us that opportunity to sink into that space where, with practice over time, we start seeing our life from a more truthful place, from the place that says, I am not that emotion. I am not that feeling. And we can explore it. So when we move into this space of acceptance, the space of radical acceptance, where we can determine and make that choice, is this something I want to put my energy into now? But the other thing we want to do in that space of acceptance is we want to awaken and accept that we should be curious about all these things that come up. I want to be curious like a cat. I want to always ask why. Why? Why did I say that thing to that person when I didn't really mean it? Why did I react to this person who was pushing my buttons when I know that they're going to push my buttons every single time I see them? Why do I get angry when I'm sitting in traffic for the millionth time and somebody cuts me off? Why? And if I can ask why, then it can lead me to that place to accept that there is something more there. There is something that's triggering these responses within me. And as I awaken myself to accept that fact that I am an emotional being, and then there are some things that will make me react, even though I don't want to. And that allows me to take a breath when I feel that reaction coming up, to take a pause before I walk into that meeting where that person who pushes my buttons is going to push my buttons and say, not today. So it's easy to talk about it, but it's easier to talk about it than to put it into practice, because even after all these years of practice, I still walk into a room where somebody like my stepdad is, and I can feel my anger coming up. I can feel all the memories of the past and all the things that happened come up because I haven't resolved all that stuff. All that stuff is stored in me as different energies, this trauma that we hold through our lives. And people see trauma in different ways. And, when we talk about trauma and suffering, I don't compare my suffering to somebody else, because there are a lot of people who suffer in ways that I don't, suffer differently in deeper ways. But that doesn't mean I should dismiss my own suffering. We all have stuff. So to move into a space of transformation, we have to again come into this space of acceptance. I accept that there is something in me that I haven't resolved. There are things, there's unresolved energy in me. I carry stuff with me from the traumas of my life, the things that I didn't even know were traumas, but it shows up all the time when somebody in our life passes away, a relationship that we broke up in, when the world doesn't go the way we expect it to, when we look at things and wish they were different, all these things show up. And if we don't do something with them, that energy, it gets stored in us in these different places as unresolved energy. And the more we resist them, the more we don't accept them, the tighter those knots of energy become. And it's like holding darkness in the light of our body. And that darkness, the longer it stays there, it festers and it festers and it grows and it gets worse and it shows up as disease or dis-ease in the body. Because that energy That unresolved energy is disharmony within us. All of the energy that's moving through us as we move through the day it has the potential to be harmonious. The way that prana energy moves through our body as we breathe in and out, and we know that the breath doesn't just go from here to here. That breath flows into our heart and gets sent through the blood to every cell in our being. But if we have this unresolved energy inside of us, it can't reach those places. And this pocket of darkness just gets darker and darker and darker. Now, I'm no scientist, I'm no doctor, but I believe the truth is the longer we hold that darkness inside of us, it starts affecting the cells around it. And those cells become out of harmony. And those disharmonious cells, if nothing's done with them, start to spread. And that disease gets bigger. That disharmony gets worse. And in a lot of our life, when that starts to show up, it might show up as pain. It might show up as these twinges or muscle fatigue or whatever it is. But in other ways, it shows up in places that it's more subtle. Those subtle feelings of discomfort, those moments when I just feel off. And as we go through our life, what do we try to do? We try to cover it up. We put band-aids on them. We reach for things that make us feel better because I don't want to feel the discomfort. I don't want to feel out of harmony. So, and so many people and so many lives turn to things like drugs and alcohol, or things that aren't quite so profound, but things to cover up the heartache or the pain or the unresolved energy. There's we all know people who get so attached to distraction. They turn on the TV after work and that's all they do until they go to bed because they don't want to do anything with themselves. They want to be distracted. Adrenaline junkies who will always be looking for something more to do because sitting and reflection and practicing awareness and acceptance and doing the work to heal themselves is uncomfortable. So we don't want to do that. But to move into this space of truly transforming our life, we have to sit in the mud, because once we sit in the mud, we can do the work. Once we sit in the mud, we can see that there is resolution. In the space of grief, I love hearing this message that Tara Brach talks about all the time. Is like, be like that duck floating on the ocean. When you're sitting in something like grief, you want to ride the waves and you want to learn to ride those waves, because if you don't, those waves are going to crash over you and pull you down deeper and deeper. But if you ride the waves, you understand that the ocean is filled with all these different currents and waves. And if you ride the waves, you know that the storm is going to pass. Now, does that mean when the storm passes that the grief is gone? No, but you continue to ride the waves. And that's how we should move through our life emotionally, energetically, is learning to accept the good and the bad, the happy and the sad, the calm and the anger. Because without those things, without those opposites, how would we know what happiness was if we didn't experience sadness? How would we know what calm felt like if we didn't have those moments of anger? The truth is, as emotional beings, when we come into the space of acceptance, we have to accept that we are emotional. We have emotions, and so many people do all that they can to dull the emotions because they don't want to face the reality of it. Again, they turn to things to cover up the truth because they don't want to accept the truth. But in this space of sound healing, in this space of energetic shifting that we do in our work, what we're doing is we're getting in there and we're starting to work on those knots, the trauma, the emotions that are stored in all these different parts of our body. And the most amazing thing that I've found over the years, because as a coach, as a transformational therapist, as all the work that I've done through the years through talk therapy, as a hypnotherapist, I find that sound allows us to get at the unresolved energy without having to talk about it. And that in and of itself can be a secret. We can get into that space where with practice, as a client keeps coming back and experiencing a sound bath or a sound therapy session, they let down their guard. They start letting go of the expectations and they start sitting in the reality of where they are and who they are. And what we're teaching in mindfulness, and I've said it a million times, I would rather call it a practice of heartfulness, because I think our goal is to get out of our head and sink into our heart, because that's where the answers are. Sound allows us to get into that space where we, through entrainment, we quiet the overactive mind. We let go of those thoughts that we keep grabbing onto and go into that space between the thoughts. And I believe when we go into that space between the thoughts, we dive deep into the heart and we start looking inside for the answers. We get out of the overprotected mind that has been programmed over and over and over again to protect us. It is the protector. And if we've been hurt so many times, we put this wall around us. Back when I was younger, it's funny when I say that because this was in my 30s, but back when I was so much younger in my 30s, I went through a deep period of grief because I lost a partner in the middle after 7 years of being together, after a long illness. And at that age, in my young 30s, it's unexpected anytime, but even at that age, it was almost like it was so unexpected. And that loss, that profound pain, really affected me in ways that it affects everybody. But I chose the wrong path. I chose that path of denial. I chose that path to say, you know what, that hurts too much. So I'm going to put this wall around my heart and say, never again do I want to feel that pain. So I built this wall around my heart and said, I'm not going to go into another relationship. I don't want to deal with that ever again in my life. And I did that for a long time. I moved through my life going through the motions, trying to keep myself busy, doing stuff that I thought was making me happy. But my body responded in a way that that's not the truth. That's not who you are. I got heavier and heavier. I got more and more unhealthy until one day it's like the rubber band snapped. And I'm driving to work and I had this panic attack that I thought was a heart attack. And that message right there, if I didn't pause and listen to it, I don't even know if I'd be here now. I don't know. But I had the opportunity to stop and listen and pay attention and accept that I was on the wrong path. And it was the wrong job. It was the wrong place to be living. And it was the wrong way to move through my life because I was in a space of dis-ease. I was in a space of disharmony. And I was able to take a pause and take stock and really reflect on where I was and who I was. And one of the things I remember now, especially after my mom passed a couple of years ago, was I recognized that as we go through our life, we are mirrors, we are reflections of so many people in our life. And for a long period of my life, I was a reflection of my mother's love. And then I shut it down. I shut it down because I wasn't willing to accept the truth. But after I started to dig deep and realize that love is the path forward in our life, that love is the harmony from which we should move forward. Love is the foundation of everything. And the way I found that is because somebody came into my life who took the opportunity to start chipping away at that wall, chipping away at the wall of my heart. And after a while, that wall collapsed and I started to see the truth. I accepted that I am a being of love and that I could do all that I can to try to deny that truth or cover up that truth. But once I accepted that truth, the light of love started to shine and chase away that darkness. That space of transformation started to happen. And it happened by bringing awareness and acceptance to my life, accepting the truth. When we can do that, it leads us into that space where we are walking that path of truth. And I found at that moment, it wasn't a moment, at that time, after really discovering the transformational power of mindfulness and meditation and sound healing and yoga nidra, that it needed to be shared because without those practices, I don't know if I would have discovered it. Without that person who was willing to show love to me, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. But I can tell you this, when you come into that space and you start doing the work, when you start looking inside, you find the answers. And our clients, the people we work with every single day, aren't provided so many of these tools. This stuff that should be so front and center in the lessons of our life are dismissed as woo-woo or dismissed as soft. You know what? It's not soft. Teaching love makes you the strongest person in the world. Teaching compassion makes you somebody that people want to be around. Moving into the space of love and compassion and faith and hope and joy and gratitude and forgiveness is the path that we should all be walking. And I believe the way we can connect to so many of our clients, to connect to that heart space What we talk about so many times when we're talking about sound is we're moving through these different energetic layers of our being so that we reach that space of bliss, the bliss space. We've all felt it. That bliss in the midst of a sound bath where suddenly we've let go of all the tension in the body. We let go of all the tension in the mind. We've let our whole body just sink down and be held by the earth. And we're immersed in all those vibrations. And the vibrations are amazing and the sounds are beautiful. But what's really happening in that moment of bliss is we're finally listening to the messages of our heart. And in that space of acceptance, when we accept the messages instead of deny the messages, we can bring those things back up and we can say, why am I not doing this more? Why am I not walking in love? Why am I not being grateful for all that I have? Why have I not forgiven myself or that person? Why am I not looking at the world with this feeling of hope instead of a feeling of fear? When we awaken the acceptance with curiosity, then we can find that path through this life that is challenging. You know what? I believe the universe puts all these things in front of us, all these hurdles and boulders and streams and rivers that we have to cross so that when we get to the other side of all those things, we see ourselves as the survivor that we are. What I believe we do, and it's what I wrote my book about, my first book about, is we start to discover on that journey that we are the heroes of our life. And we accept that we are the heroes. We know that we have a story to share. We come into that space of acceptance that when somebody asks me who the hero of my life is, yes, I will say my mother because she is the hero of love in my life. Yes, I will say my grandfather because he lived a life that was just so filled with simplicity and joy. But you know what? The true hero of my life is me because I am the survivor. I am the one who overcame all that stuff. And I have a story to tell. And when I tell that story, perhaps it inspires others. It all starts with awareness and then acceptance. And when I can start accepting who I am, I can start to forgive myself for the struggles that I had and the mistakes that I made. When I can come into the space of acceptance, I can start to forgive those people who hurt me because they made me stronger than who I was before. When I come into the space of acceptance, I can see that yes, there are terrible things happening in the world, but I can accept that every single day the world has something beautiful to offer me. Every single day I can accept that amongst all the messages that say the world is a terrible place, I can see the light. I can see the sunrise and I can see the stars and the moon and I can see the love in the people I work with every single day. And that comes from a place of acceptance. But I understand and I accept that there are some people who don't resonate with me. I accept that there are some people who think I am the craziest person they'll ever meet. I accept that truth and it's okay. You go be you and I'll be me. I'm not going to hate you. Please don't hate me. But if you do, I can't control that. It's acceptance. I have to accept that there are people in the world that don't resonate with me. And when I come into that place of acceptance, it makes my life easier. It moves me away from being fearful or hateful. Now, that doesn't mean I'm not going to protect myself from those people who may hurt me. That's acceptance. That doesn't mean I'm going to protect the people I love from those who may want to harm them. That's acceptance. But I'm not going to do it from a place of hate. I'm going to move from a place of acceptance that I don't understand what makes some people do what they do, and I never will. But I accept that. That's what radical acceptance is about. When we can accept that we are emotional beings, when we can accept that those emotions are making us stronger, those emotions are actually the admission for living a life worth living. It's the price of admission to move into the space where I have to accept my emotions. Sound. Sound is that, come on, you cannot listen to a beautiful sound bath and not feel emotional. You cannot go into that space of hearing the sound of a gong or the beautiful chanting of somebody or a beautiful meditation or yoga nidra and not feel emotions. That allows us to connect to the truth, to go into that space that accepts that I am an emotional being. It allows us to go into that space of bliss, a space of bliss where I can feel all the different things that come from my heart, not just that steady beat, not just that heart that sends love. I mean, it sends blood to every part of my being, but that heart that makes me feel, that heart that when I share, the practice of loving kindness gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That heart that when I look at somebody in pain, I feel that pain. That heart that shows the truth and the purpose of each and every one of us is to be of service to each other, that we all want to help end the suffering in the world. And we only have so much we can do. And as sound healers, as practitioners of mindfulness and meditation, I believe what we do in the midst of a sound bath is a gift that we offer our clients a moment. And maybe it's just a moment in the midst of an hour session where they reach the bottom of their heart and they maybe can hear that message. I have to accept that I have no control over what they're going to do with that. But I know if they keep coming back and reaching that place over and over and over again, they start seeing their life from a different space. They start walking in that space of love over time. I see it happen over and over and over again. With every teacher and every student that's gone through our program, I see that transformation happen. And when it happens, I'm like, that's the best thing. Because this is how we change the world. With every student and every teacher and every person who comes into one of our sessions, we're dropping that pebble in the pond and letting those ripples spread out. And I accept. I used to always say that I can't change the world. I'm only one person. I only have so much control. But you know what I say now, as I've come into that place of acceptance, is I am changing the world. And you guys are changing the world. And we have the opportunity to change the world every single day by the actions that we do, by sharing love, by being kind, by focusing on gratitude, and by working on forgiveness. I accept that I have the power to change the world. Maybe not the whole world, but my world. And when I change my world, other people change their world. That's what we do. That's where I can talk about how acceptance is part of our practice in sound. We're not just sitting behind our bowls or playing our gong. We're moving our clients into that space where they can start to discover the truth of their life, to accept who they are. And then if they want to change that, they can do the work. That's what this practice is about. So I want to give a little meditation, if you guys don't mind, right where you are. A meditation on acceptance. So right where you are, wherever you are, in whatever position you'd like to be in, I'd like you to close your eyes and just turn to your breath and just begin to settle down into your breath for a moment and take a few moments bringing yourself into this moment and just relax and breathe. And as you continue to breathe, I want you to reflect on this statement for a moment. What would it feel like if you could accept what you can't change? There are so many things in life that we can't change. Acceptance is the key. Acceptance is the key to transcending and transforming our life. Accepting moments that pass. Accepting that we're going to live a life full of rich moments and joys and happiness. I'd like you to pick something in your life that you can't change. Think about something in your life that you can't change. It could be something that happened in the past. It could be an illness or some pain or some grief. Pick something you wish was different, but it's not. And now, as you think about that thing, breathe in the energy. and breathe out that thing. As you feel that thing that you can't change come up, breathe into it and breathe out from it. Breathing in the calm, breathing out all the tension and stress. And just stay with your breath for a moment, just letting it flow. And then once again, bring forth that thing, that thought in your mind that you can't change. And be curious about how it feels. Notice where you feel it in your body. Notice what comes up when you think about that thing you can't change. And picture it inside of you. Perhaps you can see different parts of it. Perhaps you can see the fear that's connected to it, the frustration, the anger, the sadness. And just focus on that for a moment. Now, as you feel that in your body, or you feel it in your mind, come back to your breath and feel your body breathing. And I wonder if you could imagine for a moment you're standing outside beneath a beautiful blue sky and the sun is shining down. Imagine for a moment you lift your arms up to the sky and you turn your face up to the heavens and you let go. You just release the fear. You release the fears and you surrender and you accept that thing you can't change. Imagine you just see it. And imagine you let your arms drop back down and you come back to your breath. And I wonder if the fear has moved away. As you think about that thing you cannot change, perhaps you can feel some sadness swell up. Where do you fear that? Where do you feel that sadness? And as you feel that sadness, I wonder if you could just breathe into it. And I wonder if you can imagine standing on the beach, looking out over the ocean, and you watch the waves flow into the shore over and over again. Imagine as you watch the waves, you look at the ocean in the distance, and you look out towards the horizon, and you see where the ocean ends and the sky begins. And imagine you look out towards that place, and that sadness moves away from you, flowing out into that infinite horizon. And then come back to your breath. And come back to that thought again of the thing that you can't change. And maybe now you can feel some anger towards that thing you can't change. Notice where you feel that. And as you feel that thing inside of you, imagine for a moment you're standing outside on a beautiful night, looking up at the stars in the heavens. And you see all those stars twinkling in the sky. And imagine you take that anger and you send it out into the universe. And it just drifts away from you. And you just let go. Imagine as you're breathing in and out, you get that opportunity to breathe into that sadness and you let go. Perhaps you can say in your mind, I feel sad, but I'm okay. I feel sad and I accept that sadness. I feel anger and I accept that anger. I feel fear and I accept that fear is there. But right now I let go. I let go and accept the thing that I can't change. That acceptance gives me strength. That acceptance gives me power over those emotions. I surrender, and that surrender gives me freedom. Freedom from the past, freedom from the things I cannot change, freedom from fear, freedom from frustration, freedom from anger, and freedom from sadness. I surrender knowing that acceptance doesn't make me weak. Acceptance makes me strong. I let go of the things I cannot change. And I know that this surrender brings me closer to the oneness of all. I know that surrender is the only way to be free from all the negativity that comes and surrounds the things I can't change. I surrender and know that whatever is meant to be. I surrender and know that my life is my own creation. I surrender to my breath. I surrender to my heart. I surrender to the peace. And just think about that blue sky and the sun shining down. Think about the waves on the ocean and the horizon in the distance. Think about the stars shining down at night. And know that you cannot change those things, but those things bring you peace. So take a moment and place a hand over your heart and feel the peace that comes with every beat of your heart. Feel the gentle rise and fall of your chest and your tummy. And just think about how peaceful it is now to just breathe, to just be. And then come back fully into your body and your mind. And then when you're ready, open your eyes and feel that freedom that is yours. Well, that changed everything, didn't it? Just taking a moment. That was a moment of sound healing, right? We're using my voice as the sound to move you into that space of healing. So that's my lesson for tonight on acceptance and how we can connect the practice of mindfulness to sound. There's so many of those ways that we can lead into these lessons. When we connect mindfulness with sound, that's the whole purpose of why I love teaching this practice in connection with our school, to understand that when we want to practice gratitude, we can practice gratitude with sound. When we want to move into that space of forgiveness, you know what I do when I really want to move into that space of forgiveness? I start banging on that gong, man. I'm using my energy. I'm letting it go. Or the drum, that opportunity to do something when that stuff comes up. That's a true therapeutic practice. Instead of letting stuff come up and just let it sit there, we let it come up so we can do something with it. And in the midst of a sound bath, whether you're the one leading it or you're the one receiving it, it's allowing you to do something with the energy instead of just letting it sit there and sink back down. And what we practice grows stronger. And the more we practice moving the energy within us, the more we can resolve those knots, those trauma, that unresolved energy that we're holding inside. The more we start manipulating those knots of energy, just like a knot we're trying to undo, the more you play with it, it's either going to get tighter and tighter and tighter, or it's going to start loosening up until we find that perfect